My name is Percy Jackson.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Two Wise Girls podcast. Today we have a dual episode where we're going to talk about our Dungeons and Dragons homebrew build a little bit more, and then we're going to get into the Lost Hero. So what I was thinking for Dungeons and Dragons today, I first of all noticed literally today we got an email of someone asking how to participate. And so I think we're going to start a Google form just to see what we're thinking in terms of that while we kind of get our thoughts together. Questions are we either need one more person at least. We could do an NPC that I'm running, or we can do up to 5 people is probably what I'd be comfortable with. So 3 more in addition to you guys.
Or we
what?
could have we could have 4 more people and have one of them be going on the quest alone like Percy did.
Oh, have someone try to join on their own?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're open to options. We'll start a Google form, and I will try to have that for Shannon so that it's in the description of this episode. And one of the struggles that I'm currently having is part of why I was having William on today to explain how class works in Dungeons and Dragons. Because when you're building out your character, typically you choose a race. So think like human, dwarf, elf, all of those traditional
Tiefling,
fantasy ones.
Half-orc,
Yes.
halfling.
Yes, there's a lot of like fictional ones, and it also depends on the campaign you're playing.
Demon bird.
Yes. And so you usually choose that, and then you choose what role you want to play in the party, which is your class. And I feel like some in Percy Jackson lore, a lot of the class kind of things are built into what type of character you're choosing. So if you're choosing to be a satyr, for example, you kind of have somewhat of a ranger feel to it because you're so in tune with nature. But you could also be a bard because, like they're known for playing the reed pipes and using musical magic. So, a lot of the races that we came up with already kind of play multiple classes at once. So I thought we'd just explain how it works in traditional Dungeons and Dragons, what each of the classes are, and then I don't know. I feel like they're built in. So I think what we can do is when you choose what type of character you're going to play, keep in mind that this is some of the mechanics of the ways that it can work.
All right. So we're going to start with the 2 easiest to understand, like not to play, but to understand, wizard and sorcerer. They're basically just spellcasters. They suck in melee, but they're really good at magic. But they suck in melee because they can't use armor without not using spells, and they're really weak. They have really low HP. So the 2 spellcasters I'm going to explain right now are wizard and sorcerer. They're pretty similar. Well, I mean, there are only, based on what I know, because I haven't played either, I've only played ranger and cleric. Based on what I know, the only 2 functional differences are that wizards use intelligence, whereas sorcerers use charisma to cast their spells, and wizards and sorcerers have different spells they can pick. But they share a lot, but there's some that only wizard gets and some that only sorcerer gets. And also, I think non-functional is that wizards, they learn their magic, whereas sorcerers are born with it.
Yeah, and so, there's in ways you could think of Athena kids almost as wizards because they are so intellectually based, and their powers come from intellect. So I would consider them one that could potentially be a wizard. But
It might actually be wisdom. I don't know.
it might,
I
yeah,
think it's intelligence.
it's one of those two stats, right? And I always get those confused. But
Intelligence is like understanding um wisdom is like understanding how the world works.
okay,
Intelligence
is like book smarts.
yeah.
So then it would be intelligence. And so, yeah, so wizards casting from a place of intelligence, that's what I think like an Athena kid would be. A sorcerer casting from a place of charisma is more similar to like your Apollo kid, or maybe even like a Dionysus and a Demeter kid, where their magic is a little bit more, like a part of who they are. Um, and not necessarily something that they have to practice.
All right. And then there's druid, which like I actually don't know how they get their magic, but I think they're like similar to wizards and sorcerers, except they like do animal stuff, and I'm pretty sure they use wisdom. I could be wrong because once again, I've only played ranger and cleric.
Yeah, and druids in D&D, they can shapeshift into animal forms. Like you usually get at least one animal form pretty quickly, right? And then you can, as you level up, you get more and more animal forms you can change into. Demigods don't necessarily have the ability to change form in that way, but they do have the ability to like somewhat alter their forms in certain cases. And so it's not a complete change. I mean, like Aphrodite kids, it sounds like might be the closest to like really being able to change appearance, but they really only change it within other human bounds. So this is one.
Just a shapeshifter.
Yeah, it's more of a shapeshifter.
Hold on. Don't spoil her.
Oh no.
Saying that.
Yeah, well, where we're playing this is very much a Sea of Monsters place, because what you guys might notice is that one of the demigod children I didn't discuss could be a playable character was Hades, and that's because at the time when I was writing the races, William didn't know that there were any canon Hades children yet.
Yeah, and then I guessed it.
Yeah, he guessed it because we got to the junkyard scene in Titan's Curse. If you know, you know. And so I kind of was like, what do we know about Bianca so far? And then, as we were like talking about the things that she's done, he was like, is she a Hades kid?
No, you asked me what god it'd be, and then I said Hades because I was the only one left that hadn't heard. Oh, wait.
No,
yeah. You heard that. You didn't read book 2.
Yeah. But I prompted him with like, we know she's a demigod. Who do you think her parent is? And then he was like, is it Hades? Yeah. So I think I'm going to leave them off for this campaign. We'll probably add them in if we ever do other campaigns. But so just to give you an idea, is that we're like mostly focusing on the lore, Sea of Monsters, and before that.
Right. Wait, so am I supposed to do more?
Yeah, so you just did Druid. What would you do next?
I'm gonna do the different ones. They're fighter, monk, barbarian. Right. So fighter, monk, and barbarian, and actually also rogues. they have no magic. At least in 5th edition. I'm pretty sure 2024 edition monk has magic, but not 5th. So they don't have magic, and so fighters, they're really skilled. Barbarians, they're really strong. Monks, they're just, I don't know, actually. And then rogues are, I think, also really skilled, but in a different way. So fighters, they're like really skilled with weapons.
So like your Ares kids. And
yeah, but like they're
Athena
actually
kids.
Good. They're not like crazy. Like I'm pretty sure I haven't played barbarians, but I'm pretty sure they're just like crazy.
Okay. So barbarians are like Aries kids when they're angry. Fighter would probably be more like an Athena kid, right?
Yeah, and they both use weapons. Monks don't. They just punch people like this.
Jeez. Monks are just martial artists on steroids, right?
Yeah, they're martial artists, and I think they have magic. They just can't cast spells.
Demigods have magical abilities sometimes, depending on their parents. It's kind of a situation where in traditional Dungeons and Dragons, you'd probably be multicasting with somebody who has magical abilities, along with being something like a fighter. Yeah, they call it multi-classing. It's the idea that as you level up, instead of leveling up just in one type of class, you can add on a second one and choose to level that one up. And so you can eventually dual wield some of these roles in Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like because of the nature of demigods, we're kind of starting out as multi-classes because you have to be able to fight. A lot of us are going to have magical abilities. Like it's inevitable in this universe.
Fighters,
Okay.
they can, I think, they can use sword. They can use different sword. They can use big sword. They can use tiny sword, also known as dagger, and they can use multiple swords, and they can also use spear.
So they're pretty much efficient in most weapon types, just not projectiles, it sounds like.
No, they can actually use bows. I forgot about that.
Okay, so they're proficient in all weapon types.
I think all martial weapons. I don't know how they do with simple weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something else. That's more complicated.
And in the Percy Jackson universe, it does kind of seem like your weapon is predetermined based on who your parent is. I mean, like, I'm sure there's Apollo kids who like to fight with a sword versus a bow and arrow, but
there are probably some that like fighting with guns, Bulma.
With guns, maybe. Guns don't come up for a very long time in Percy Jackson, though. Actually, wait, no, they do come up in Titan's Curse because of the militia people.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
All right, and then the next two, I'm gonna cover Paladin first. I think Mama can tell you about that better. But basically, they are like fighters that actually have spells, and they're basically, I don't know because I don't play Paladin, like I said. I've only played 2 characters.
Yeah.
German Cleric, like I said before, and but I think they're only good with like sword.
So when I played a Paladin, I had a sword and I had a bow, but I think I was more skilled in the sword.
Yeah, because I was bow guy.
Yeah, and Paladin, they usually have ties to deities in Dungeons and Dragons world, which like not every type of player does. In Dungeons and Dragons, there actually is like there's a system of gods and stuff, but I haven't ever played a campaign where that's too prevalent. Because, there are certain magic users where like their power comes from gods or from like some sort of connection with the gods. Paladins are kind of like crusaders, is like not even just a knight, because there's such a tie to them being potentially holy. Although, my religious trauma, I couldn't play it too religious. I was like, no, I'm just a vengeance paladin. That was my deal. So it was like the thing that I was duty bound to in my case was a vengeance thing, although I don't think I ever developed a backstory enough to know what I was being vengeful for.
I never developed a backstory at all.
Yeah, we didn't really get too into the like LARPing aspect of it when we played last time. Live action role playing.
Wait, shouldn't that be just LAR?
No, it's LARPing. I don't know why, but
LARPing is like LARPing is like something you do like outside. is the best way to put it. Like, people will go to, like, a park and, like, do things, like, in person, not, like, playing a game, I guess, is the best separation from ttrpgs that I've seen.
Alright, so next one's Ranger.
Ranger, yes.
And basically, they are one with nature, and they are also hunters. And they mainly use bows, but mine also had a short sword and bagpipes. And they actually get spells, which is like something that sets them apart from bow fighters. And I think actually makes them both better, although people say fighters better, fighter with bows better. But
yeah,
it's fun. It's fun to play a ranger, okay?
It is. And so with like rangers, that very much translates to almost like a hunter, I would say, because they are so in tune with nature, because they also not that kind of hunter, because they also work with bows. I think satyrs could potentially be ranger-esque. There was another one that I said. Do you remember which other one I said could be a ranger?
Mortal?
Well, yeah, immortal could potentially
like
be.
I said, I'm going to be a mortal ranger.
You want to be immortal? He hasn't even gotten to the part that's relevant of the mortal person that I'm thinking of.
Fun.
Actually, we'll read tonight so you can see who the mortal is, because I think we're like one chapter away from him getting introduced to her.
Right.
But, okay, so we got Ranger, and it's slightly different to, if your introduction to Rangers is Lord of the Rings, I would say it's different to them in that, like, their ability to commune with nature, their ability to do things like tracking and, like, be around animals so much is magical. Because, yeah, they can, like, speak to animals.
Yeah, that's actually just a spell that a lot of things get.
Yeah.
Alright, so there's, I think, 3 more. So, Cleric, they're basically like a priest that gets magical powers.
And they're usually the healer of the group, right?
Yeah. Even if they don't want to.
Yeah, so their magic usually has to do with healing. So Apollo kids are kind of the obvious with that one. They'd probably be your cleric. And the cleric usually is somebody who, like, they may be a part of battles in D&D and stuff. Like, sometimes it's very necessary to use every single party member, but the majority of their magic is usually reserved for healing up the party.
Alright. And then, I think the penultimate one is Warlock. It's basically like Wizard, but you're, actually like Sorcerer, because it's also a Charisma caster. Oh wait, there's also Bard. I forgot about Bard. Bard plays music, Charisma caster, likes running campaigns. All of the Charisma casters can also do that.
Yeah, I think your dad did it at least once during the campaign we played.
No, he uses Charisma to convince someone into doing double or nothing.
Oh, okay, yeah. But yeah, so a bard is just music player that convinces people to do things. I feel like that translates to, I mean, Apollo kids are music, but maybe even Hermes and staters, because they play their reed pipes. Theoretically, you could do bard and be practically anybody in this one, though. I mean, maybe even because of the, like, Aphrodite kids being able to convince people to do things, they probably could potentially be a bard, right?
I think they'd be a bard.
You think that's more sorcerer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the actually decided penultimate Warlock, it's like a sorcerer, except instead of being born with it, they got their power by, I think, selling a part of their soul to a patron, which basically, like, so there's 3, I think. There's the Archfiend, the Fae, and one other I don't remember.
We could just simplify it and say they sell their soul to a deity for powers.
Yes. And they are actually good in melee, because you get that pact of the blade. I think that's what it's called. And then you get a sword. And even then you can just use a sword. And it's not going to be horrible. And then the final one is artificer, which they make machines, they find artifacts. So you can actually do a lot with them. Like, for example, you could speedrun the campaign by nuking the BBG.
Yeah, just bomb like Tyson did, right? So Cyclopes would probably be an artificer or a barbarian, but like artificer because of that ability to make things, that understanding of technology right away. Athena kids could be them because Athena kids build machines as well, and of course Hephaestus kids. Those are kind of the three good examples for that one.
And actually, I think they get a little bit of magic too.
Yeah, and also just as an aside, like the one time I'll shout out my like craft fashion account that I barely ever post on. It's called Fairy Made Upgrades. And
It used to be called Fairy Armor Upgrades.
Yeah, it used to be called Fairy Armor Upgrades, but I found out that Fairy Armor is trademarked. But yeah, Fairy Made Upgrades. The idea being that if I was to make myself like a character that I sew clothes as, it would be a fairy artificer.
Yeah, so for example, like, Death Cap.
Oh yeah. I'm coming up with an original character for one of my classes right now, and
Partially original.
Partially original. She is a villain named Deathcap, very much inspired by Poison Ivy. Just to explain Dungeons and Dragons for beginners, and that will suffice for our very simplistic build we have going here, is that it is a turn-based game. And so the Dungeon Master creates a narrative. They tell you like what's happening, what the scene looks like what you can see in different places, and then you get to decide what happens. So like say we walk into a dungeon and I tell you we're in a dungeon that has 3 doors and a chest on the left side.
Then we would spend 45 minutes checking every door.
Yeah. So what's an action you would say if I described that scene to you though?
I check the. I would like to make a perception check to see if the chest is wrapped.
Well, okay, you don't even have to say it that way because I know, because you're a newbie too, you could say, I want to look at the chest that's sitting in the room. And so I would then tell you to roll per perception. And so we're going to all need to have a D20. I'll make sure to get you one and mail it to you before we actually play this. But the idea is then you roll your D20, which is a 20-sided dice, and the closer you get to 20, the better you're able to check this thing out. So
if it's a 20, it's a crit, and then you get super lucky.
Yes, so 20 is the most lucky, and then getting a 1 is like a critical failure. So something bad would happen instead of something good.
Like maybe if the chest was a mimic, it would say it looks fine.
Yeah. So your perception check.
But realistically, it would probably just say you have no idea.
Yeah. So the dice kind of determines what your luck is in that situation. Probably end up working together to come up with everybody's stats. So deciding, do you have the most health? Do you have the most dexterity? Do you have the most wisdom, intelligence, charisma? But some of it is based off of who you choose. So like if you choose an Athena kid, for example, you would probably have high intelligence and pretty high wisdom. If you choose somebody like an Apollo kid, you'd probably have pretty high charisma. So we'll decide that as we go. But yeah, your stats can boost things like that. So if you have a high intelligence and you ask, can I check out that chest? you get a boost in your score. So it'll be like a +2 to whatever you roll the dice. So you roll the dice and then you get an automatic 2 added to it. And that boosts your ability to perceive what's in there. And so your character is going to have an increased ability to do certain things above the other people. It's going to depend on what type of character we're building for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and then let's see, combat. Do you want to explain how combat works?
Yeah. So basically, when combat is initiated, you roll initiative. Everyone rolls initiative, and then the DM rolls initiative for the monsters, and that determines the turn order.
Yeah, so when we approach a monster, you'll hear me say roll for initiative, and that phrase ends up being like the big one in D&D, where it's like every time you hear this, it's on, you're about to enter battle. So yeah. So because it's turn-based battle, everybody takes a turn, they decide what they're doing, they roll their dice for the various things. We do an initial roll that determines who goes first, and again, because we're using a 20-sided dice, it's whoever's, closest to 20, whoever has the highest number. And then we'll go in that order. That also includes the bad guy, who is included in that order, who I roll for.
All of the bad guys.
Yes.
Actually. So, like, if you fight 2 orcs, both have to roll separately for initiative.
Yeah,
and if you summon 50 cats, then fighting is going to be a nightmare.
You can summon 50 cats and have to roll 50 different initiatives?
More than 50, because you're still fucking...
51, jeez, okay. But yeah, so the way that I want to do things isn't going to involve a traditional board. So one of the things that happens in the turn-based combat is you can move your character a certain amount. But we're not going to have a board in that way. So, we're going to kind of ignore that mechanic in this playthrough of, how much space can you move? Like, I'm not going to say in one turn you can get out of the building and then come back around or something like that.
Yeah,
but that doesn't make sense. Yeah, but like moving, from a couple feet down the room to the enemy, of course, makes sense for one turn.
Yeah. So how it works is that, in a turn, which is 6 seconds, you can run 3 feet and attack.
Okay, that's what the official stat is based off of?
Yes. Unless you're a gnome or a halfling, which is 25 and attack.
Because you're smaller.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we're not going to worry about movement speed. That stat, completely doing it away with it in this build. Instead, on your turn, so when it's your turn during the combat, you can decide if you're the type of character that can do a spell. Am I going to do a spell right now? Am I going to use one of my weapons at the enemy? And depending on what you choose, so like let's say you choose to shoot your bow and arrow at the enemy, then you would roll, and there's actually a few different dice we'll need. We'll get you a set. We need to get you a whole set. But
I think for a short bow, which is what I use, it's a D8.
It's a D8, yeah.
Which means 8
and I think it goes up to 12 if you have a long bow. But essentially, your weapon then gets another little sub dice, and you can roll that for the amount of damage it does. And so when you do your roll, you tell me what you roll, and I'll tell you, what that did to the enemy. So based off of the amount of damage. So like if you roll low, it could be something minor. If you roll big, it could be something like you stabbed them. Yes.
But actually there is something you have to roll before you attack, or after, depending on if you're weird. You have to roll a hit before you roll before.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. And so that's like the D20, right?
Yes. Rolling the hit is D20. And then depending on the monster's AC armor class, it will hit. So like if you roll like a 19, it's probably gonna hit. If you roll a 20, it's definitely gonna hit, and you actually get double damage if you roll a 20. if you're all a 1, you're probably attacking your partner.
Yeah, so what he was talking about with armor class is everybody has a health stat. And so that health stat, like this one that I'm talking about in particular, is your armor class. It's your basic ability to take a blow.
And it increases with armor or sheet.
Yes, it
Or
can
spells.
increase, and it can also increase as you level up. So your
Okay.
I would for this mechanic. So, with armor class, you roll your d20, and if you roll higher than that person's armor class, so their ability to take a hit, then the hit lands. If you roll under that, they don't.
And if you roll really low, you'll hit your partner.
Yeah, and if you get like a critical fail, it's something silly will happen. Like you end up your bow ricochets and you hit yourself in the face.
Or you shoot the bow instead of shooting the arrow.
Okay, yeah. All right, so we covered that. We covered damage. In one turn, we're only going to be able to do one action. So that's one spell or one hit with a melee weapon of some sort. Or a martial weapon of some sort, because I think technically bow and arrow isn't melee.
Yeah, or slingshot or gun.
Yeah. So there's a few stats that we'll have to all come up with together based again on our character builds and what type of weapons that people use. We'll cross-reference the actual Dungeons and Dragons handbook just so that we're kind of having some place that we're pulling all of these numbers from, but we will have to adjust it. Yes, William.
So, are we doing, like, how are we gonna do our stats? Because I know in, like, normal D&D, there's, like, a couple ways you can do it. You can do standard stats, where it's, like, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, 8. You could do, like, 46, drop the lowest, reroll ones. You could do 46, drop the lowest. You could do 3d6. You could do d20 if you don't like having fun.
Oh, that's a good question. We'll get back to that one, but yeah, we're gonna have to like really think about how to determine stats, just because there's so many methods of doing it, and I really do think it's gonna have to depend on your builds. Like, I really do think different demigods, it makes sense for them to have certain innate stats be bigger and better than other ones. So we'll talk about that. Okay. Okay, so we did combat. Is there anything else we should talk about?
Weapon system.
In what way?
Like how... Actually, I don't know. We haven't...
Well,
the difference between standard and martial.
I don't know what that is even in regular D&D, so we're gonna ignore that. Very, very easy to put our weapon system is going to be, we're going to have daggers, swords, bows.
Gun.
No guns. Not for this one. I'm trying to think what other weapons we've seen. I mean, we've technically seen a scythe, but I don't think any of our characters would have a scythe.
So what if...
is an spear.
Then what about we create a gun?
Yeah. Let's not worry about guns right now, William. Okay.
Did you say
we'll say that our... Yes, because Annabeth fights with a dagger, so I feel like a dagger makes sense to potentially have.
Annabeth doesn't fight, though.
Yeah, she does. Dagger, sword, bow and arrow, and spear. Those are the standard ones. And we'll just say, because people are going to potentially be on this that aren't in here right now, if there is another weapon that you're interested in your character having, like, for example, a hairbrush, we can talk about that, and determine, does it make sense and how we'll make it work. But yeah, we'll just say standard issue weapons are that. And then standard armor I will say, because it is very set in the demigod world, it's leather and plated with brass. So shields are most likely wood plated with brass. And yeah, you can have both leather and plate armor, I would say.
You I'm pretty sure that would get you over encumbered really quickly. Oh yeah, there's a weight mechanic. So basically, you can like only hold a certain amount of stuff, and if you hold too much, you get slown, you get exhaustion points, and if you get too many exhaustion points, you die.
Yeah, but we're not going to worry about that too much. I think like it's very common for demigods to have a magical carrying item with them on quests where, you know, like you don't have to necessarily worry about the weight of your items and stuff. So we are going to incorporate some magical objects that make your quest easier and that do away with certain mechanics that would make this a little too mathy and a little too meticulous.
I like math.
I know you like math, but we don't.
No, I hate math.
But
Math
you
is my
wouldn't have
sworn enemy.
What did math do to you?
Failed it from 4th grade to college. Every single
Did
year.
it make you go back?
They had me in like remedial help from the time that I was 9 until I was like 22, and I could never
It's
figure
like
it out.
when you're below the level that you're supposed to be, and so they put you in a class where you're getting more help.
Yep.
That's
Was really good at everything else, but can never do
William,
math.
you're just
I gave up.
really good at math. It's just always made sense to you. Your test scores would say otherwise, sir. He's got the kind of brain where math makes sense to him, and we all envy it. You know, like you can start planning out, I want to play this type of character. If you're choosing a demigod, who you want your demigod parent to be. I'm going to say this as DM for me to have control over it. None of these demigods find out their power or like have powers that they know or expect. You know, they always find out their powers on accident. And it seems like they don't necessarily have control in how their powers are expressed up until they realize their power. So you guys don't get to determine what aspects of your demigod powers you have. I do. I've decided that just because I think that it'll make it more interesting.
Well, I mean, I have control over what powers I have because I don't have.
Well, I know, but if you're a immortal with true sight, I can tell you what you're seeing.
Okay.
And how it comes to you.
Yeah,
so,
but I know what I can do.
I'm just saying, there's still ways that the forces that can mess with you as a mortal with true sight. So you are not immune from this if you choose that one. I will determine what that means for you.
Okay, but it'd still be fun for me. So I'm still picking more range.
Yes. So the other thing is, and Shannon was asking about a title for this. I've been trying to think of what I want to have you guys do, because last time we determined we want this quest to be taking place on the Sea of Monsters. And so I think I'm going to have you guys do what they call a fetch quest. It's essentially go get this magical item. And it's going to be somewhere along the Sea of Items, or the Sea of Monsters, the Sea of Items. I mean, it's technically both. But it's going to be somewhere along the Sea of Monsters, a character that we know from the Sea of Monsters that you're fetching something from. I haven't determined what that is and why you're fetching it yet, though. So I hesitate to give the quest a name because I feel like the name's going to be determined by what that is. But just know we are not going to go all the way to Polyphemus's island. Unfortunately, I just don't want to fight. You want to fight Polyphemus? He's been through enough. Okay, he deserves a break. He had the fleece stolen.
Strike him.
But I've just determined Polyphemus is not as far as we're getting. So it's going to be someone that they see before Polyphemus. or potentially somebody that Jason, Odysseus, or Aeneas sees along that sea. I haven't quite decided who we are doing the fetch quest from or how that comes about. And then the other thing that I've been thinking about story-wise is it's kind of a trope in Dungeons and Dragons that a lot of people will start their quest out in a tavern. Like, you basically, all of the party members, because they're usually
because it's easy. It's
Yeah.
easy to get them together. So you won't have to wait 5 sessions to get them together.
Exactly, because they come from such various backgrounds and they're usually like an unlikely group. In Dungeons and Dragons, the usual meeting place to start out is the tavern of like, oh, all of these people bump into each other in the tavern and they all are similarly looking for this one thing and they decide to work together. That's usually how they start. I think the thing that makes sense is we start out at Camp Half-Blood. You know, like, first NPC we're gonna deal with is probably me as Chiron. And Chiron's going to kind of trigger the events that will lead to a quest. The other thing I was trying to think of mechanically of how I want it to work is because the quest is typically given to a specific player. And so it is going to have to be given to someone specifically. I haven't decided if I want you guys to know yet or if I want to set up a scene and that whoever does the thing that I set up a specific way is the person that the Oracle then decides to talk to. Story. So if you do choose a mortal, we have to come up with a background story where it makes sense as to why you would be at Camp Half-Blood in that moment. Which I'm sure we can think of something. There's multiple angles to do it, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the ways that are canon to the book. I think NPCs that we could potentially bump into, William really wants to bump into the Golden Trio at some point. He's been begging to do a stat sheet for all of the Golden Trio members.
Yeah, we're not going to fight them, right? They're going to
No, we're not going to fight them, but maybe they pop up at some point. And I'm going to guess that we're going to have you guys bump into at least one god. It just makes sense. It always happens in the books. It always happens that Percy talks to at least one.
Bumping into a god, Mr. D.
Well, yeah, Mr. D, of course, is another camp NPC we could have starting out. So that could be the first one, but I think it makes sense somewhere along the way for, you know, like, either a god needs to help you or a god decides to help you on their own, because that usually happens in the story. There are very, like, specific background tropes in the Dungeons and Dragons handbook.
Yes. And I want to.
You don't have to use those. Like, it's really, it could be a case of, this is fan fiction, this is your own original character. And so your story can be basically anything that, like, gets you to Camp Half-Blood. So you have to determine, you know, if you have a godly parent, who is that godly parent? What is your relationship like with your mortal parents? Like, are they still alive? Did you run away from them? Are they good? And you're just at Camp Half-Blood for the summer. That's all things that it's your choice, I would say. What else? You can also determine, I would say, how old you are, but keep it within the age groups that are specified at camp. So, you know, like, I think I put this on the satyr sheet, but the satyrs, because their ages work a little bit differently, they have to look like they blend in with the campers, so they have to be, like, at least looking like a teenager. With the hunters, you could be any age theoretically, but you can decide, I look like I'm 13. I would say hunters probably fall within the ages of 15 to 13 is what I think. I might have put this on their character sheet as well. So, like, I would call, you know, like, the one canon hunter that I'm thinking of right now that I don't want to say it because I realize that was a spoiler for William. 15.
So it's not anymore.
It's that I'm currently thinking of. But they're, like, Zoe, for example, is very, very old, thousands of years old at this point. So, but she looks like she's, what was it? Was it 14?
They say that she looks like she's like 12, 13, 14.
Yeah, so
Like to the point when she's like driving, they're like
yes.
she's thinking about how they might get stopped because she looks like a middle schooler who's driving.
Yes. What, buddy?
Alright, so there is one thing about the backgrounds that I would just like to tell you. For each background, there is a personality trait, ideal, bond, and flaw. So you're probably going to want to come up with those.
Ooh, okay. So yeah, you come up with your personality. What was bond?
Bond is like something you something you want, or like something you have to do. Like, for example, criminal bond 1 is I'm trying to pay off an old debt I owe to a generous benefactor. Or acolyte bond 4, everything I do is for the common people.
Okay. So I feel like let's not use that mechanic exactly. If I would say your character, you would want to come up with what is the thing they ultimately want out of life. Do they want chaos? Do they want to help out their glory? Do they want glory? Do they want to save somebody in particular? Do they want to just help out their friends? They should have some sort of intrinsic thing that motivates them. And then I think that I will also give you guys wiggle room to come up with your own fatal flaws. And every character needs to have a fatal flaw. It's like the thing that is your biggest thing to overcome in this lifetime.
Complex trauma.
Right? We've got so many. Hard to pick just one. But yeah, come up with an idea, and you can of course borrow one from Percy Jackson and the Olympians. You could say, it's hubris for me. You could go very simple. You could come up with something, that is more complex than that. I think that at this point we're ready to start building out like characters and coming up with that background. Again, I'm going to put out a Google form so that Shannon can have it up with this episode that just kind of gets an idea so we can kind of see who we want on this campaign. See what makes the most sense for the campaign that we're going to run, because Shannon and William's characters, they're going to come up with theirs first, and then I want the rest of the team to complement them.
Are there any YouTube channels where people could watch like an example of a campaign if they want to see what it looks like, if they've never watched one before?
We haven't really watched D&D in that way.
I think BGR did one, but I might be misremembering.
Yeah, we don't really... We never really watched other people's campaigns. More so, like, we tend to watch the creators who, like, make fun of D&D stuff or, like, make content around Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
I mean, I think MinMax does like that. Right.
Oh, yeah. So, the few creators that we both like that do Dungeons and Dragons adjacent content.
Well, I mean, she doesn't like Jack.
Yeah, I don't like okay, you don't need to say everything like that, buddy. Putting me on blast. So we watch these people that are doing a campaign together currently. Although, have they come out with that content yet?
Yes, I actually just recently released episode 1, and it's 2.5 hours long.
Oh, okay. So the campaign's called Min-Maxed, and it's
we're giving him free advertising.
Tater the Bard, Jack C. Whipper, what is that called?
Sword Arts instructor Ben Say and David the Arrow Bard.
Yeah, I'll send Shannon the link so it could be in the description. But these people, they do content on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and they're currently doing a campaign together because they all, like, 2 of the guys do sword content, and then one of the guys does like bow content,
and another one of the guys does meter hammer content, and another one of the guys does hook content.
Yeah, so because they all like stuff like that and they all love fantasy, they got convinced to all come together to do a campaign together live. And it's currently happening. William just said episode 1 just got up, so we need to watch that together.
It's 2 hours. No.
2 hours? Okay, but like a session usually is pretty long. It'll probably take like the whole recording time for us usually when we get there. So yeah. Anyways, so I think that's about it for the Dungeons and Dragons portion of the pod.
Bye.
All right. So we will have William back on in another couple weeks and hopefully have a little bit more developed.
Bye.
The one
No sneaking.